Good morning, everybody. This is Natalie's Nuggets, and we are on number video 16. So we're talking about relational integrity. We're using my book. You can get that on Amazon. And I wanted to talk about collaboration. Sometimes we have teams within our sphere of influence. We have a ministry, and I develop teams. And it's important that we have good, healthy collaboration. And one of the tidbits that I want to pass along to you, again, we can interact more about this. You can develop your own, what I call a code of conduct. Now, you would think that working with Christians, that wouldn't be necessary, but through the various life experiences I've had, I have asked team members to sign a commitment. We want to foster, again, the fivefold community through accountability and honor. Those are important principles that we stand by. Fivefold being the apostle, prophetic, evangelist, pastor, shepherd, and teacher, pastor, shepherd. And I want to have integrity within the ministry we'll have, and I'm sure you want that high level of integrity with personal ethics amongst your ministry leaders, amongst the people. Maybe it's in the marketplace. And it's a way that we hold each other accountable with grace in order to have authentic, integrated, and embody ministry with one another and amongst God's people. So we have the responsibility to ensure that accountability by all the ministry leaders. Even if we're collaborating with somebody, there may be moments in time and seasons where we ask somebody that we're partnering with from a different ministry and its affiliates, that especially with those that we ordain or commission, and that will show you the depth of their relational integrity if they're willing to sign something. And what that means is that we all agree to a certain set of Christian standards of conduct, and they're going to cooperate fully with our accountability policy, processes, and procedures. So let's say you are a ministry leader within Kainos, or we want to collaborate with you, or we're affiliated with you through maybe fiscal sponsorship. We have a statement of ethical guidelines for these individuals that we take under our wing. And the purpose is that we want to represent Kainos through a working relationship. And again, our board members are also agreeable to this policy, and the policies hold each other accountable so that there is a ministry of integrity. So there are certain violations that can take place during a covenant of ministry that we have between one another, and we know that some behaviors are certainly implicitly illegal and immoral, and that would result in a judiciary process. For example, if you as an ordained person or a ministry leader know of anybody being abused, especially a child, or sexually violated, you have to report it to your state immediately, and we abide by the law of the land. And we might suspend your capacity, you might lose your licensure, or ordination. We could remove you from the position that you might have. Now, you would think that would be common sense, but if you look around the news, you'd be surprised at some of what is being surfaced at this time. So some behaviors and attitudes are unethical by Christian standards, and they compromise people's ability to perform and provide ministry. And we want safe settings where the flock and those that are vulnerable or hurting, anybody can come and know that these are safe environments. There are other behaviors and attitudes that can harm others or interfere with the ministry that we have within Kainos. So the way we address these violations is within a framework. It's a commitment towards a restorative, if it's at all possible, rather than a retributive justice system. So, what are some of the things that you might think? I have a high regard for relational integrity, a godly, consistent, authentic, genuine walk with the Lord without pretense or facade before God, others, and ourselves. Honesty. I think that's an attribute that the Lord wants everybody to walk in. So we want the highest level of trust and integrity. And that requires that we act honestly and fairly in our dealing with others. I've had instances where people have, I will just call it almost financial fraud. They expressed a need, and the need was not really a need. So we need to be mindful of working with people like that. We're going to make all of our communication accurate, honest, and clear. And we want to intentionally avoid misrepresenting the truth or misleading others. And if you're a ministry, we're stewarding other people's money, so we need to be very careful. Trust is a relational currency, and when that's violated, it has to be addressed. So that's one principle, honesty. Another one is learning how to exercise professional etiquette in our ministry relationships. We want to come alongside other ministries. We want to honor and respect for them, but we also want them to honor and respect our differences. Slander, malicious gossip about a ministry or a person is discouraged, obviously. Again, I've had a situation where there were things being posted on Facebook. People were coming to me asking me, Natalie, is this person referencing you? So I went to that person, somebody that I was very close to, collaborated, thought we were peers, had trust established. They denied it, but it did look very clearly like they were trying to direct things towards me. And I suggested that that person take that down and no longer continue in that way, because people were coming to me as well. I had noticed it. I assumed the best, but when I have people coming to me, that's a whole nother thing. Nonviolence. We acknowledge the worth and dignity of every person we're ministering to, and we work to counter the forces of violence that can inflict harm to individuals and communities. We're going to strive to see that our words and our deeds don't directly lead to any physical, psychological, or spiritual abuse, or child or spousal abuse, for example. And maybe it's not abuse, maybe it's neglect. Those are things that we take seriously, and we train people up how to report it correctly. They come to me, Kevin and I, and then we will direct it to the authorities immediately. Sexual responsibility. Again, we want the men and women who lead our ministries not to engage in actual or perceived sexual misconduct. Certain behaviors, sexual contact with a minor, sexual abuse, sexual molestation of any person, including but not limited to any sexual involvement or contact with a person who's legally incompetent, vulnerable, or anyway vulnerable, a vulnerable adult. Sexual harassment is not tolerated. We want to be sensitive to those who are being harassed. They are perhaps victims, and we do not want anybody using one's position of privilege for sexual exploitation or any sexual relationship outside the bounds of marriage, even if it's consensual. We are a Christian ministry, and unless you're married, there should be no sexual contact that is outside the biblical principles. And we believe marriage is between a man and a woman, so we're not going to recognize alternate lifestyles. That is not a healthy biblical lifestyle. Again, things that you would think we take for granted. Doesn't mean we don't work with people. Responsible use of authority. Again, we want them to use we provide professional training and practices for the benefit of the people we serve. We don't want any unfair personal advantage being extended. And there is a power differential that exists in our relationships when you are leading and serving others, like people that you may be supervising. So we're going to structure those relationships in mutually respectful, empowering, non-exploitative ways. Another principle that's very important to us is confidentiality. We want to protect the welfare of individuals in the communities we serve. So we're going to take seriously our obligation to safeguard information entrusted to us as professional ministers, ordained men and women of God. If there's a legitimate reason for the health and well-being of an individual or a community for us to divulge information that's shared with us in confidence, we will actively seek permission of disclosure from that person. But we recognize that if anything pertains to immediately danger of bodily harm or loss of life, and anything applicable to the laws mandate reporting, and we stand by that. And we have had to address some things within the ministry in the past, and it's all been a very good, positive outcome by all people. Let's say there's a conflict of interest between you and other people. We all have different educational, vocational backgrounds, different systems of accreditation, affiliation, but we want mutual accountability to exist for our own ministry as well as others. So we want to truthfully represent the facts and qualifications. We're not going to call ourselves professional counselors if we are not licensed within the state. Whatever we equipped, authorize, and license, we will be truthful in sharing that with one another. Let's see. We reserve the right to refer a client towards professional services if necessary, if it's beyond the scope of our ministry. Let's say John is a licensed therapist and he's meeting on a client on behalf of Kainos. John is limited to the religious and spiritual counsel. He's not psychological therapy during our settings within the ministry. But we can refer to him as a professional in the secular world. During ministry, it is questioned whether the client has a psychological disorder. We can discuss different qualified therapists, and the one that he's working with may not be qualified because he has contact with that individual outside of his professional ministry. So those are just examples. We represent Christ and the values of Christ, and we want to present that in an honorable way before the world and others to uphold Christian moral standards. And we uphold the expectations to stay in consistent, honoring relationships within the ministry and with those that we're collaborating with. And if those are broken, we will submit a restorative process. I've been part of many restorative processes where reconciliation or an appeal has had to be made within the ministry or within leaders, and even outside of the ministry, I've been called in. So volunteers understand that it's voluntary, it's uncompensated often, there's no expectation of current or future employment. We make that known unless something else is discussed. And leaders agree to these code of conduct, whether you're a volunteer leader or a paid leader, and we are responsible for reinforcing these codes under our direction. So I welcome you to join me. Relational integrity. These are things that we can talk about when we gather together on a Zoom. I'll get you more information in the coming days ahead. God bless you. Bye-bye.